if you're on a spiritual journey, to expect goodness out of life because you think that suddenly you start believing in a certain way or you start living your life in a certain way, you think that it's going to return a favor to you, return its goodness to you. Once you start believing the goodness in life, once you start thinking high vibrationally and start thinking positively, you believe your life is going to change magically. That could not be any further from the truth. It is important to be realistic, and it's important to keep our expectations realistic in life, because the truth of the reality is hard, right? For many people, there's a lot of pain involved. I mean, for everybody, there's something that they're dealing with, and the deeper that you are, and the more reflective and critical of yourself that you are, the more you're going to suffer. Yes, there are people that are really like nonchalant about everything, and they don't really give a crap about how they're affecting other people, how they're impacting other people. So those people, you could say, well, they don't really seem to suffer that much. They don't really seem to care that much. That might be true, right? But let's bring the focus back to your own life, right? You are hopefully a self-accountable person, self-aware person, self-reflective person, introspective person, who you're always willing to look at yourself in the mirror. You know, start integrating spirituality onto your path. If anything, this has caused you more confusion because you thought that once you start equipping yourself with this knowledge of spirituality and all these concepts, and you start acting in a certain way, you start following these principles and start following these teachings, that you thought that your life was going to suddenly like improve. It's partially true, right? Because the way that you experience your life is the way that you receive your reality with your perceptions, your belief system, that the way that you formulate your narratives based on how you experience, and that's something you actually do have control over. But to think that just because you start doing all these things or start thinking in a certain way that you're going to have a life turn around magically for you, that's going to be more detrimental on your journey. That's what we see a lot from this new age, is that they first tell you about this whole like high vibrational thinking, consciousness, like all these abstract concepts that sound very like intelligent, right? And I think that for us in human nature, if something sounds good, we want that for ourselves. So we start trying to become these things. People try to align themselves with these concepts. For example, like loving, full of light, consciousness, you know, high vibrational, forgiving, all these things. A lot of things are very much glamorized on this journey. But then, you know, the problem here is that a lot of people pursue this path out of the sense of escapism. The sense of escapism, and because they feel inferior in their life, and somehow inferior meaning like they feel like they're not doing well enough, they're not doing good, or there's something is missing, and then they start encountering these concepts, and you deem this as valuable, so you start integrating, and then you start to see a mismatch somehow where your life doesn't seem to be really changing. Of course, like I already mentioned, there are cases that you can definitely see improvements in your life, but that has to do with the way that you're taking charge of yourself. You have to see yourself as the blueprint in which you move in your life. You are the one that you have to change, but not change in the sense that you're fixing yourself, like there's something wrong with you, that you're broken, but rather you notice the pattern that you've been engaging in that might not have been entirely conscious. You know, a lot of the ways that we think, that we behave, react, it's based on our habits, and also our conditioning, indoctrination, our belief system. And our belief system is something that we can change, because once we start changing the beliefs, especially beliefs about ourselves, and you will see that a lot of the ways that you think, the way that you react, the way you perceive your reality, it primarily stems from the way that you see yourself. And this is why there's a lot of people that are very much rooted in victim mentality, and not to blame their victim experiences, because victimhood is a real thing. People really have been victim to a lot of atrocious things in the world. But that's exactly what I'm talking about, though, because the world has so much darkness to it. unless you are actively trying to work on yourself, unless you're trying to like hold yourself accountable for the way that you react and the way that you receive information, the way you interact, then your life itself is not going to change. So spirituality alone, this itself is not going to magically change your life. It's the way that you integrate this concept, or it's not even a concept, right? This is a way of life. It's a way of life. And you don't have to follow anyone else's principles or teachings or rhetorics to make it make sense to you. You can take it into consideration. You can appreciate the message. You can definitely make usage out of the substance of in the message. But you don't have to use every single message as your truth, even if it's announcing itself as a truth. The truth is, the absolute truth here is that you are in charge of your own life. You are. And this is why there is merit in really being authentic with yourself. You can't be authentic with other people unless you're truly authentic with yourself, and this takes time. This is why I say the way you're approaching this path matters, because this has more to do with the way that you're choosing to play an active role in your own life, rather than trying to use this as a way to control your life or to control others especially. And that's what happens with a lot of people, is that people think that once you are spiritual, you're gonna start being able to control your reality, like manifest like that. And manifestation is a real thing, but that's not what this is about. But the way that you look at manifestation is, it's not that you suddenly start like manifesting things like that, especially having to do with people's free will. You're not going to be able to control other people's lives. You're not going to be able to insert yourself as a position of superiority over other people. It's really important that you don't make generalizations. And this is why you have to really develop discernment. And when you become more aware of yourself, the way you develop a skill set to question yourself and be accountable and look at yourself in the mirror, it'll become very easy for you to look at other people as well, which is why it has to all start with you. But it cannot be out of you expecting fairness out of life. It cannot be out of expecting yourself to be able to control everything, every outcome in your life. It cannot be for you to expect like people to see you in a certain way just because now you are spiritual and just because now you are doing better for yourself in your own world. If you approach life while expecting fairness, right? People say all the time, well, I used to say this all the time too, life is not fair. It's not fair. Yeah, life is never going to be fair to you. It is probably in your best interest to really get rid of that mindset that just because you are this way, that you expect people to respond to you in a certain way. Because that stems from your desire to control. That stems from like a sense of entitlement. You know, you have seen so far, way before you maybe like experience your spiritual awakening, how unfair life is to you. You probably are in a lot of pondering questions, and you're probably ruminating on a lot of things, because a lot of things don't make sense in life. And regardless of what your reasoning for diving into this path of spirituality is, really, the more you are on this path, the more you'll realize not every question that you pose is going to be answered by life. And so if you're asking questions like, why is life so unfair to me? You're asking the wrong question. Because this is not about making life fit your narrative. It's about you integrating your beliefs. This is about you and yourself. This is about you doing what you have to do for yourself regardless of what other people do. Your external life is never going to be fair to you just because you're a certain way. Your external life is never going to always respond to you in the way that you want it to respond to you. It's never going to always reflect back to you what you're reflecting to it. That's unrealistic, because we are working with something that is like much greater than us. We're working with a force here, and whatever your belief system is, whatever your spiritual belief system is, whatever, and it doesn't matter what you believe in. Like, you could be an atheist, or you believe a Christian, just a spiritualist, or you could be a specific religion. It doesn't matter. It is just simply undeniable that life is not something we can control. But you can control the way you receive your life. You experience your life. What's in front of you. You can't control the world around you, but you can control what's in front of you. And what's in front of you should be the mirror first. First and foremost, it should be the mirror. So when things happen to you that you feel like it's unfair, it doesn't make sense, and it is so like repulsive and you can't believe it, it's hurtful. It's hurtful. It is infuriating. Don't make this about why is this so not fair. Life is not fair. So you have to start asking yourself productive questions, right? When you catch yourself asking questions from life, about life, posing a question pertaining to a certain philosophy, ask yourself, how does this question serve you? And once again, also reminding yourself that not every question that you pose is going to be answered. It's okay to ask questions. We can ask questions, we can have curiosity. There's nothing wrong with asking questions, right? People have questions all the time, like why does this person do this? Why do they act like this? Why couldn't they do this to me? Why couldn't they do this in a better way? Like, we have all kinds of questions, especially pertaining to the way that other people live their reality, but also in the way that they treat us, right? But this was never about asking why the world around you is like this. Or at least that question may never be answered. But at least you can integrate your learning and your lessons that you obtain from different areas of life, because usually what happens with true spirituality, true authentic spirituality, is that you start to see life in a more meaningful way. You start to see significance behind every situation. And that's not to say that everything is a lesson, but you can look at it that way. Everything is a message in a way. Just everything is information. And yes, not every piece of information is necessary information, right? But it is still information that you can choose to pay attention to if you feel like there's value there. So instead of expecting life to be good to you because now that you're doing better for yourself, you're trying to really be a better person, use that as your opportunity to really gain control of the way that you treat life, that you treat other people around you, and you navigate life with your knowledge, okay? But knowledge doesn't always mean understanding. Knowledge doesn't always mean application. So it doesn't matter how much you know. And the problem with spirituality is it doesn't matter how much you know about the world outside of you. It's about what you're doing with that information that matters the most. The impact that you create is what you're doing with that information within your capacity. Everybody has free will. Yes, you can do what you want. But at the very least, if you want this path to serve you, then be more responsible with the power that you have in your own life instead of trying to control other people and their narratives in their own life. Just because you're spiritual, it doesn't mean everyone who is spiritual is going to share the same beliefs as you either. It really doesn't work like that. This is not a religion. This is why it's really important that you stay on your own path. Understand that this is not going to protect you from experiencing real life situations. People are still going to hurt you. Your relationships might still fail, because those things are work of its own. And when you're dealing with like factors that have their own free will, such as other people, you being spiritual has nothing to do with how much like happens and what happens in the situation they share with other people. If they are conscious and mindful and sensitive enough to you, and they're willing to share a conversation with you in a way that it leads to a resolution, then excellent, great. But that's not something that is going to just be given to you just because you're a good person. You know what I mean? You already know how easy it is for people to misunderstand you, and you vice versa. You might misunderstand other people too. So this video was supposed to kind of give you an insight on why your life is not going to suddenly be better just because you're a spiritual person. The notion here of you creating your reality has more to do with the fact that the way you're choosing to create a narrative in your head in the way that you perceive your reality. This is not you creating a reality and the reality just happens to you like that, like immediately like that. Although I will say that very much could happen, right? That's what we call manifestation, right? Whatever we call for, whatever we want, we get answered for it. We receive. That, I'm not going to discredit that part either, because that is actually very much true. But usually that's a result of you doing a lot of self-work. It's you being responsible for your power, and you being responsive to yourself first and foremost before you try to control your reality. This is not control, okay? Anything that you receive authentically on this path is a result of you doing your self-work, and it's a gift. It's a gift that you manifest for yourself. This is not like a gift from the outside world because now you're on this journey. So don't pay these people who spew BS no mind. That's another thing. There's a lot of people who will try to, sell you a dream, right? It's like that with everything, right? At the end of the day, everything is a marketing strategy for a lot of people. It's easy to sell you a dream, and when people are hearing about what they want, everybody wants success, everybody wants to be happy, everybody wants to be the lucky girl, everybody wants to be like the master manifestor. So when people are talking about, oh, you can get there if you start doing these affirmations and blah blah blah, it's not simple like that. It's simple, but it's not like that. It's not like you suddenly start doing these spells and affirmations, your life changes, and other people around you are suddenly responding to you like you're the best thing in the world. No. This is very complex because ultimately the way you perceive your life is your reality, meaning that your perception is your reality. There's the objective reality, right? But then the way that you receive the reality and perceive and understand and comprehend the reality is through the lens of your perception, right? You also have to really keep that in mind. That how much of the objective reality are you willing to consume here? I mean, there's no right or wrong answer. You can choose to stick to what you choose to see, but that doesn't mean that's the absolute big picture. You have to at least be very honest about how much you're willing to do here, right? What are you not willing to do? What are you not willing to see? And now when we factor in the traumas, right? So people who have survived a lot of traumas in their early lifetime, and maybe their life is still filled with traumas, you're still processing. For these people, you already know that if you were to start asking yourself some difficult questions, it's very hard to like completely work through your perception when you have like so much trauma that you're dealing with. For example, like PTSD. Again, just because you know something, it doesn't mean you can apply it right away, right? It's really difficult to break the pattern. So if you're used to seeing something in a certain light, right, which is what people do when they're traumatized, they kind of see the same thing in the same light because that's what they're used to. That's how their trauma taught them. You might be very aware of the fact that you're in victim mentality. It doesn't mean that you can work through that overnight. Like, it's a process, right? So be patient with yourself. That was just an example. And this is why I say your perception is the reality, but that the reality means different things for different people. As long as you're honest about where you're at on your own journey, you can definitely progress through it. You can definitely allow yourself the time and process that you need to go forward in life, and it's okay to also go backwards in life. And spirituality could be like your sense of comfort. It helps you with hope and faith, which are very powerful when you feel helpless in life, because it's like believing in something that's bigger than yourself, right? And which can be very comforting. Just make sure that you really make this about your own journey and not trying to make it fit into other people's narratives, or don't try to control other people's narratives either, and don't try to control the narrative of the universe either, okay? Have fun.